Olivia and Mia Flores are married to the highest level traffickers ever.
There's your beauty queen on the right, Val, and this is Vivi, I believe. Not many pictures of them out there now.
To become informants against the Mexican cartel. Their husbands worked with and then brought down El Chapo, along with dozens of other high-level narcos. They had everything money could buy, luxury cars, huge houses, and expensive jewelry, but they chose to give it all up when they cooperated with the U.S. government. They knew that life was about more than wealth. It was about love of family and doing what's right. That's the blurb for Cartel Wives. Cartel Wives is a love story, a married to the mob story, an insider's look into the terrifying but high-flying empire of the new world of drugs. And finally, the story of a major DEA and FBI operation. That's the blurb for the book Cartel Wives, written and published by the wives of the Flores twins, two of the main informants against El Chapo and Sinaloa cartel a few years back. Now, amazingly, they wrote and published this book from their witness protection, exile / hiding place while they were in hiding, and their husbands were in the witness protection wing of some federal prison, or perhaps in a halfway house-like environment. Now, when criminals write their own stories or have it packaged up by entertainment professionals, it becomes very sanitized. The blurb claims that their story is about love, family, and doing what's right. Not that the Flores families don't have love or family bonds, but it's definitely always about the money, first and foremost in the world of serious gangsters. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Now, last year when I was in Chicago, I actually had an hour-long phone conversation with one of the Flores twins, and especially his wife. Someone put me on the phone with them when I was in the Chi. We talked mostly about their fairy tale romance.
So Al got on the phone with Jay and Val. And I've heard another time or two where Val was like, where he was like, yo, I'm hoping to have a conversation with Val. I'm sure they're not happy with the things that they hear, but it's like, yo, your life is on parade. You put it out there, it's out there. It is what it is.
How they were enjoying normal suburban life wherever they were at, and how they wanted to make a positive change in their community. Now, all those things are probably true to some extent or another, but even after doing the right thing and that money, quote, doesn't buy happiness, turns out they were still spending dope money on lavish trips and material items. Though they did pay their kids' private school tuition, and ironically, I guess they paid off their own federal student loan debt. Viviana Lopez and Valerie Gaetan, wives of former Chicago kingpins Pedro and Margarito Flores, used drug money for 2018 and 19 trips.
So remember, he just said 2018 and 2019 trips. It's 2023. This all went down in 2008 as far as them doing the deal and cooperating. If the wives beat their case and nothing comes from that, well then, y'all made all the right moves. But if y'all get 10 years for moving that money around and doing what you did, they were all bad moves. They let you get away with it for 10 years. For 10 years, y'all was getting and spending money. If you get away with it and you beat the case, cool, y'all made all the right moves. But if you lose 10 years, you fail. But I'm sure you'll be all right when you get out of there. But how many years y'all gonna give up? I guess you've had a good life so far. I'm sure you've had fun with some bread, done some things, seen some things. I just don't understand how you thought that you'd get away with rubbing the money in the government's face. They filthy too. They ain't trying to see you win.
After the Chicago kingpin twins were arrested in 2008 for their dealings with El Chapo, their wives took lavish trips to the Caribbean and Europe that were paid for with bundles of suspected drug cash they got in the mail. Viviana and Valerie used drug money for the trips in 2018 and 2019 to fly, to Las Vegas for a Jennifer Lopez concert, to the Turks and Caicos, Dubai, Greece, Italy. This all came out in a warrant that the U.S. Postal Inspector had for a particular piece of mail. Priority mail package with a return address for the mother of one of the twins' wives. And the two women are referred to as Spouse 1 and Spouse 2 in the affidavit. But like I said, in June of 2021, they were charged with stashing hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So evidently, they were really mailing money to each other.
Dollars and money from back when their husbands went to prison, and receiving it in these packages in the mail over the years. But things were kind of fishy from the start. Of course, when you make a deal with the feds, You have to tell them all the crimes you committed, and you got to turn in all the stuff you're supposed to turn in. But one of the twins gave his wife a Bentley as like a going away present right before he went to prison. And I would imagine at the time this was going on, the feds probably knew what was happening and they looked the other way.
Absolutely.
They can usually trust criminals to keep doing what they're doing long enough to hang themselves.
Yeah, because they're going to grab them again and get more info from them if they're not burnt up already.
People that have been engaging in risky behavior for themselves and others to get money, I mean, if you don't stop them, they won't stop on their own. So while they needed the Flores twins to testify, they probably let them do whatever they wanted to do, thinking they were getting away with it, knowing they would drop the hammer later on, which they did on the two wives a few months back. Now let's go back and refresh our memory on the Flores twins and some of the things that went along with their wives' lives of luxury as detailed in their book. Pedro and Margarito pled guilty to handling thousands of kilos per month for Sinaloa. Without guys like them, there is no Sinaloa cartel. When the indictment came down on them, they actually went to hide out in Mexico, actually living with El Chapo for a period of time and still directing traffic in Chicago and all across the country from south of the border. Once they made the decision to cooperate, they kept working with Sinaloa for a while to help the feds build an airtight case. But as comes out in this indictment, like they would set some of their old customers up. They would call guys, hey, come get 50 kilos on consignment, just pay me for 10 of them now. Boom, the feds would hit them. But they were probably doing other deals on the sides they didn't tell the feds about and kept the money and stashed it, and that's what's been being spent all along. It's a major no-no not to tell the feds about all your crimes and not turn over everything you're supposed to. They can and have pulled people out of witness protection and sent them back to prison. After all, even some feds don't like quote-unquote snitches, and they probably love the opportunity to go back and punish people.
To just pull the rug out from under you. I don't understand how you would gamble with that. Like they punks, like they wouldn't pull it.
That they feel like kind of, got away with something in the first place. Like I'm sure they loved to slam Sammy the Bull when they gave him 18 years back in the day. The indictment provides more details on how the wives spent their money. In exchange for their cooperation with prosecutors, the Flores twins got relatively light sentences of 14 years in prison, while El Chapo, of course, got life. According to the warrant for the mail that was put out in October 2019, one of the Flores brothers' wives was spending up to $30,000 in cash per trip. A man in a pickup truck would deliver the cash to a travel agency in Chicago that booked the trips. A witness told the authorities the cash was, quote, rolled up and smelled funny because of its proximity to drugs. It sounds like one of those things the police use to get warrants. I don't know why they always say money has traces of drugs or smells like drugs. I don't know, but either way, someone at this travel agency tipped the feds off, or the feds probably followed one of the Flores relatives there, because I'm sure they were watching them, went in there, put the squeeze on the travel agency, then they had to make up a reason to get a warrant, so they said the money smelled like drugs. Either way, things started to unravel. On July 19th, 2018, customs officials encountered the wives after their plane landed at JFK Airport in New York, arriving from the Turks and Caicos. One of the wives had 5 cell phones with her. 2 of them had Chicago area code. The other was carrying a sheet of notebook paper that appeared to tally up tens of thousands of dollars coming from different sources. I mean, were they still doing stuff? Probably they were just getting old money sent to them. A separate search warrant was executed in September of 2019 after a drug-sniffing dog alerted on a package addressed to one of the spouses. The package contained $5,000 in cash and $500 gift card with the receipt from a Walgreens store in the 4300 block of South Archer in Chicago. Security footage showed a relative of the wife had mailed that package and other packages. So that relative knew where the money was at, would get it and send it to them where they were at in witness protection. So they had money stashed in Chicago being sent to them in witness protection, and the wives were going on lavish trips while their husbands were finishing up their prison terms. I don't know why they would have thought they weren't being watched, But of course, I guess you get used to that in that life. Like, the biggest drug conspiracies usually go on, you know, when people are being surveilled. Like, the biggest drug deals are put together from prison. Twins' wives were probably so used to being surveilled and this, that, and the third, they were just used to it, so they had somebody sending them money and they're flying around, but they had no visible means to where they're getting the money to go on $30,000.
No, it wasn't thought out. It was, let me save my family. I want to save my family. I want to do things different. And you did everything the same. You showed. You didn't have no fronts to account for it.
Trips when they're supposed to have turned all their money in. Hubris is a word that comes to mind. Look it up. According to the postal records, 82 packages went to one of the wives' address and 55 went to the other address between 2017 and 2019, presumably all full of cash. Like the rappers say, they were still spending old money. Let's go back to my phone conversation.
And that's cool. Have the old money, keep the old money, but be smart. Y'all blowing that in everybody's face. Like, that's crazy.
And with one of the twins and his wife. I could say that it was truly bizarre, not because anything wild and crazy was talked about, but exactly the opposite reason. Nothing wild and crazy was talking about. Even though they'd lived a wild and crazy existence, you know, their conversation with me was about their own romance, what they were eating, how they enjoyed what they were doing in the community, and their first date. And,
yeah, puff piece.
Which is fine, but,
yeah, I'm straight.
You know, they, like a lot of high-level criminals or even drug addicts, definitely can see the cognitive dissonance at work. And the definition of cognitive dissonance is the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions.
Well, that's it.
So you think of yourself one way, we're just a suburban family with kids in school and we're in love.
And we looking at you like egomaniacs that couldn't get out of their own way.
But in fact, you know, you're operating at the highest levels of the criminal underworld and using the money to go on lavish trips while being watched by the feds, and yet they're in this delusion of, like, I don't know, they're regular business people and they're just gonna go do what they want with no repercussions.
All right, see, I'm not alone in feeling this way. Like, come on, man, it's a puff piece.
Title of the two women's book is Cartel Wives, a true story of deadly decisions, steadfast love, and bringing down El Chapo. Textbook cognitive dissonance. After all, if you helped El Chapo build up by selling his drugs, how is it that you bring him down? And as for the steadfast love, remember that the twins' father, amongst many other people's, lost their lives as the son's decision to cooperate was revealed. Yeah. And that the love of money over even family is the most steadfast love of all for high-level criminals or legal business people, in fact. I mean, the tales of rich people abandoning the raising of their children to somebody else abound. In fact, you should always be dubious when even a small-time drug dealer or gang member tells you they made their illegal money for their family or their kids. People really love each other. They don't want to trade money for a father in prison or dead in the streets. Throwing the word family around paints a pretty picture of a disturbing reality. Same is true for the drug addicts who roam the streets and can cry at the drop of a dime and tell you they want their kids back.
Right.
No, bitch. You just want to get high.
That's it.
Now profit, American dope.
People don't like hearing it like that, but that's what it is. Some of us don't want to hear your bullshit. Some of us is like, you can spit the sob story all you want. Nobody cares. And when you're the only one in the room that believes it, it loses its power.
So it's probably not a good idea to go on lavish trips to Europe and Dubai while your husbands are in witness segregation prisons for telling on El Chapo, especially when you're having millions of dollars in illegal drug proceeds delivered to you at your own witness protection home.
Yeah, probably
older
not a
brother
good
of the
idea
Flores
to do that.
twins, once Chicago's biggest narcotics traffickers, admitted he hid millions of their cash under his porch in Texas. That was
Big brother ratted the boys out and their wives.
after Pedro and Margarito Flores had surrendered to the feds in the Sinaloa case over a decade ago. Armando Flores, who was 53, pled guilty Thursday to participating in money laundering. His younger twin brothers, whose cocaine and heroin trafficking business was supplied, of course, by El Chapo, ended up agreeing to help authorities bring down the Sinaloa cartel. And in 2008, they went into federal custody and they made a deal. But meanwhile, their brother Armando, money laundering. His younger twin brothers, whose cocaine and heroin trafficking business was supplied, of course, by El Chapo, ended up agreeing to help authorities bring down the Sinaloa cartel. And in 2008, they went into federal custody and they made a deal. But meanwhile, their brother Armando of Round Rock, Texas, which is near Austin, got busy hiding their drug cash, collecting debts from their customers, and dispersing the money to their wives, who I mentioned at the top. Flores said he was living with his brothers in Mexico when they surrendered in 2008, and he also agreed to cooperate with the feds. In December of 2008, the three brothers and their families left Mexico for the U.S. Armando hid about $300,000 in a trailer he took across the border in early 2009. He collected another $760,000 in drug cash from the twins' associates in L.A. Quote, he hid most of the proceeds by burying the cash underneath the porch on the back of his home, the federal prosecutor said.
But even that money that you collecting from all of the people that you were dealing with before you went to prison, even that money's finite. There's no telling if it's gonna keep coming or not. So why blow it on Bentleys?
Most of that money ended up being spent. He also picked up $2.9 million and $1.9 million. In conjunction with Valerie Gaitan, one of the twins' wives, that was owed to them, and it was stashed in a car parked in a garage. And then another time, a U-Haul truck rolled up carrying old furniture that had $2.3 million hidden inside it. Armando Flores regularly mailed cash to Gaitan and their families, and he would exchange small bills for $100 bills in Chicago. So that's how they actually got onto it. I did a story about it earlier. The twins' wives, who, I mean, I guess if you think you're going to get caught, you won't do it. But you would think after being caught up in the case in the first place, they would have some discretion. But
no discretion.
You know, when you're used to living that lifestyle of basically infinite money, hard to give it up. So if you go back to my other story, Cartel Wives, they wrote this book. So they're supposed to be in hiding, or they aren't hiding, but they come out, so they do a press tour all through South America, Mexico, the United States, show their faces, write a book about being the wives of the twins. In the meanwhile, they're going to places like Dubai, they're going to J-Lo concerts, flying on private jets. And all the feds have to do is, you went to Dubai? Well, that's this much for the airline tickets. And okay, you stayed at this hotel. That adds up to this. You ate 3 meals a day. Oh, that's $52,000. Well, you filed $50,000 a year. I'm just making those numbers up on income tax. Right there, you have money you can't account for. And that's how they, and of course they're going to watch you, right? Even the prosecutors and stuff, I mean, kind of don't like snitches, and the fact that the twins only got 14 years, they're out right now. There's probably some federal law enforcement who feel like they got away with something, and they were watching them, and the wives were spending recklessly, and it culminated in this. So like I said, the third brother, Armando, just pled guilty to money laundering.
So now you got an extra case, and you're facing 10 years, and your own brother-in-law is gonna rat you out, and he was in on the entire operation, so he knows everything.
He was picking up millions of dollars in unpaid debts in the immediate aftermath of the case, and then at least one instance the feds know about, 2.3 million stuffed in old furniture showed up in a U-Haul truck to the home, I guess, in Chicago. Well, no, wherever they were at. So in 1999, Armando Flores pled guilty in Chicago to federal narcotics trafficking charges and sentenced to 5 years. So he has his own history. So he went in 99 for 5 years. When he got out, his brothers would have been at their peak. On Thursday, he told District Court Judge Matthew Kennelly. He was working as a Lyft driver recently until he was arrested 10 months ago. And he's been locked up ever since with no bond. His sentencing date hasn't been set. I'd imagine, I don't know, maybe he'll get 5 years maybe. Other defendants charged with Armando Flores in a money laundering case are Valerie and Pedro Flores' wife Viviana. So both of the wives and an aunt, and a girl named Bianca Finnegan, who was one of the wives' sister. They're all free on bail while awaiting trial. The twins themselves were not charged in the money laundering case, and the feds are seeking a $500,000 settlement against the wives. So I mentioned this before. When I was in Chicago, I was put on the phone with one of the twins and his wife. They were in witness protection. They talked to me. If you didn't know who they were, talking to them on the phone, they would just seem like a regular couple that maybe, made a bad decision, got mixed up. Someone asked them to drive a car somewhere and they got caught with some drugs. You would have never thought they had been, really integral to the international drug trade. I mean, they were sending millions and tens of millions a month back down to Mexico. I mean, over the years, the Flores family probably, I would imagine, they personally sent over $1 billion to Mexico. They had to have. The one I was talking to told me, he said, it's funny seeing 50 Cent do that, or everyone being interested in the BMF show and Big Meech 50 Cent show, because he said, we had 10 Big Meeches in Chicago alone. I'm sure that's a mild exaggeration, but not that much, because, I met a guy that was in Chicago that was friends with them and didn't want anybody talking bad about them, that he alone, from what he described, what he was doing with them was, a Big Meech size. I mean, he was connected to a group there in Chicago, but hard to believe that they wouldn't have laid low after all this.
Hard to
They were
believe.
getting millions of dollars delivered to them, but
No lay low.
it's all
on those
about the
people
lifestyle
there.
and the money.
That's
So,
Ego,
hopefully that's
ego,
all they did,
ego.
and they don't get a
Pride.
drug conspiracy case. And you might think, well, who would sell drugs with them? And I'm not saying that went on, but, there's only so many people in the world who can move large amounts of drugs and turn the money in and understands all the infrastructure. So you'd be surprised. People will keep working with you even after you're telling on somebody else, because all that really matters is, did you tell on me?
Right.
So the floor.
You'll hear that a lot. You'll hear that in a lot of people's ideologies of cooperating, snitching, whatever you want to call it. I still love Buddy. He didn't do it to me. I'll still work with Buddy. He didn't do it to me. To me, you're playing with fire by doing that. You thirsty. You want to keep the connect going. You believe this person won't do that to you. My belief is that when that person runs out of people to do it to, it comes to you.
Flores twins' wives, not the Flores twins, they've been convicted of money laundering or pled guilty along with their brother Armando. Millions of dollars in proceeds passed through their hands even after they got on the witness stand against El Chapo. They're awaiting sentencing, but the twins were not charged. They're still out and free, and hopefully there's no charges going to come against them.
No, they got nothing. They just got to worry about their wives.